Hi friends, my name is Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vegas. So I wanted to talk today about the Extinction Rebellion. This is another one of the groups that is about addressing the environmental disaster that is climate crisis. The climate crisis today, it's not climate change anymore, it's climate crisis and has been for a while. And I saw on Chris Hedges' on Contact on RT, Russian TV, I saw I'm laughing because Alia is in the background here making a lot of noise. She always comes down when I do my videos and she tries to get into the picture. She'll have to get behind me if she wants to do that. Anyway, so I watched Chris Hedges on Contact, and it had Robert Hallam, I think his name was. He's one of the people in Extinction Rebellion. And sadly, there wasn't really one mention of veganism during that time. I think I was sort of thinking that a group, I've been watching this group for a while, and I haven't seen any mention of veganism. And you can't find veganism on their site. And you might be asking if you don't watch this channel, because I talk about veganism fairly regularly, particularly when it comes to the environment. I talk about animal agriculture and its devastating effects on the environment. And I usually post a couple of memes, which I'm going to do right now. So when I see, so I checked out Extinction Rebellion's site, and I've checked it out a while ago, and I didn't see any mention of that the urgent need for people to go vegan. And then I've checked it out recently. Still no mention. I was hoping that a group that is aware that imminent extinction, it's on the horizon, would sort of bite the bullet and kind of, do what needs to be done, and that means to cease consuming animal products. I would rather people, because veganism is an ethical position, I would rather people go vegan for ethical reasons. That would be much more preferable to me. But of course, an ethical reason is to prevent the extinction of most life on the planet. That's a good ethical reason too, isn't it? And there is no doubt that veganism would help tremendously with addressing the climate crisis. There are numerous reports now. Most recent one is the one that I've just posted for a UK extensive, very detailed report. And if you don't feel like reading that, just check out that meme and look at the tremendous effect that adopting a plant-based diet would have on the climate crisis. It's no small thing, and it should be central to any green group that is worth their salt. This should be central. And I would have thought, as I said, I would have thought that a group that calls itself Extinction Rebellion, and I'm hoping that they realize how dire things are, I imagine they do, would make veganism central to their efforts, because it is a major, major, major factor in the climate crisis, as well as eutrophication and acidification of the oceans and land use. And it would address world hunger, and there are so many things, but the most important thing is we don't need animal products to survive. We can easily meet all our nutrition requirements from plants and other non-animal sources. So all this killing, torturing and killing of sentient animals, the 1 trillion land and aquatic animals plus that we kill every year, this is completely unnecessary. So all this torture and killing, the violence, is completely unnecessary, and it's destroying the planet. So, you would think, right? The elephant in the room, you would think that would be something that a group like Extinction Rebellion would grasp with both hands, wouldn't you? You would think that they would think, okay, well, all these other groups, 350.org and Greenpeace and all these groups that are mealy-mouthed and you know, they refuse to address the elephant in the room. You would think a group like Extinction Rebellion could do that. I'm sorry to chastise the people who have started this group, but I just think, oh, you know, I didn't bother with it when I saw the name of the group. I didn't bother looking at it for a while because I thought, I bet you they do not talk about veganism and the absolute necessity. The central thing is for us to adopt a plant-based diet. I just knew that they wouldn't do that. And sure enough, and still, and regularly, you know, because I do vegan education every day, if I'm not doing a vlog, I'm doing I go around online and I look for opportunities to mention veganism. I always put the ethical thing first about non-human animals being sentient, and then I proceed, if it's about the environment, I proceed to the climate crisis, which is being talked about a lot and people are panicking. And yet, we're on the edge of extinction, imminent extinction, and people are still sort of preferring to please their taste buds. And by the way, a plant-based diet is delicious, but they prefer to eat these, you basically ingest death, than, you know, than survive. I mean, this is how dire it is. If we keep doing this animal agriculture thing, eventually it will, you know, eventually we will kill ourselves by continuing to kill and torture other animals. And eventually the climate will decide for us whether or not animal agriculture is going to continue. But by that stage, we are animals too. We won't continue either. I mean, it's already the writing is on the wall that animal agriculture is completely unsustainable, with the massive draining of water resources, the use of land, the destruction of land. Let me share some, apart from that report, which you can check out the whole report. I'll leave a link to it, the one that was done in the UK, and I just posted a couple of memes on that. Check that out in the information section. But there was also a report in Cornell University. And I mean, by the way, check out the video I did 2 or 3 years ago addressing the near-term extinction movement, who had the same issue, would not talk about veganism, would argue and argue and argue against it, even belittle people who mentioned it. I hope that Extinction Rebellion isn't that bad, but I mean, this is how people tend to treat this issue. They just try and pretend it doesn't exist, or that it's something personal that we may do if we want to. This is a massive issue, adopting a plant-based diet. It's not some sort of, never was a personal choice in quotes. This is something that we all need to do for other animals and for the planet and for ourselves. It's an imperative. Anyway, this Cornell University said it showed exactly how ridiculous our consumption of animals is. And then I'm going to share with you something else, which will also give you an idea of how ridiculous it is. It takes 5.9 kilograms of grain to produce a kilogram of pork. It takes 3.8 kilograms of grain to produce a kilogram of turkey. It takes 11 kilograms of grain to produce 1 kilogram of eggs. It takes 2.3 kilograms of grain to produce a kilogram of chicken. It takes 13 kilograms of grain and 30 kilograms of basically eating grass to produce 1 kilogram of beef. It takes 21 kilograms of grain and 30 kilograms of basically foraging to produce a kilogram of lamb. I mean, these are sort of like ridiculous, you know, this is ridiculous. The amount of food, in quotes, these animal products provide for the tremendous amount of grain that is produced to feed these animals. I mean, it doesn't even make sense in that regard. It's never made sense. From an essay from Chris Hedges, animal agriculture is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than all worldwide transportation combined. Cars, trucks, trains, ships and planes. Livestock in their waste and flatulence account for at least 32 million tons of carbon dioxide per year, or 51% of all worldwide greenhouse gas emissions. Quote-unquote livestock, I don't like using the word livestock, but I'm going to use it because it's in this essay. It's a speciesist term. But livestock causes 65% of all emissions of nitrous oxide, a greenhouse gas 296 times more destructive than carbon dioxide. Crops grown for quote-unquote livestock feed consume 56% of the water used in the United States. 80% of the world's soy crop is fed to animals. And most of this soy is grown on cleared lands that were once rainforests. All this is taking place as an estimated 6 million children across the planet die each year from starvation, and as hunger and malnutrition affect an additional 1 billion people. In the United States, 70% of the grain we grow goes to feed quote-unquote livestock raised for consumption. By the way, Chris Hedges is vegan, just in case you didn't know. He's done numerous essays now on this and says this is the most important thing that we need to do. And you may have seen his On Contact with Chris Hedges, one where it's talking about the looming food crisis, and that is about animal agriculture as well. The natural resources used to produce even minimal amounts of animal products is staggering. 1,000 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of milk. Add to this the massive clear-cutting and other destruction of forests, especially in the Amazon, where forest destruction has risen to 91%. And we find ourselves lethally despoiling the lungs of the earth, largely for the benefit of animal agriculture industry. Our forests, especially our rainforests, absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and exchange it for oxygen. Killing the forests is a death sentence for the planet. Land devoted exclusively to raising quote-unquote livestock now represents 45% of the Earth's land mass. And this does not include the assault on the oceans, where 3/4 of the world's primary fisheries have been overexploited and vast parts of the seas are in danger of becoming dead zones. We can, by becoming vegan, refuse to be complicit in the torture of billions of animals for corporate profit, and can have the well-documented health benefits associated with a plant-based diet, especially in the areas of heart disease and cancer. The billions, it's trillions really now, trillions of animals, including aquatic animals. The problem with a lot of these groups is they think that by saying something like this is these green groups, including Extinction Rebellion, which I think, political action is good and everything. I think it's good to do nonviolent civil disobedience. I think that's a very good thing. I'm not putting them down for that, but I really, at this point, I have no patience for groups that are they're wringing their hands and crying out and doing all sorts of political stuff, and they're not vegan, and they're not promoting veganism as a central issue to their campaigns, as a central issue, not some, it's a personal choice, you can do that and that will help, that kind of thing. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about this namby-pamby, yes, just do a little bit of cutting back. No, that's not going to work either. Cutting back, if everybody just cuts back, there is no time for that anymore. And besides, let's try and adopt an ethical position about this and realize we don't need to kill all these billions and billions of animals, right? And this is killing the planet. And it's their planet too. So this whole cutting back, if everybody just cuts it back a bit, and this actual cutting back doesn't work very well. People think that maybe having a couple of tablespoons less of chicken or maybe missing a steak now and then is sort of, participating in this. Is actually making some sort of an effort, real effort. No, it's not. It's not. And permaculture isn't the answer too, either. Growing fish in ditches, it's disgusting. Using animals as little tractors and stuff. Let's just stop using them, shall we? That's the thing with 350.org. I don't know why people keep interviewing that guy, Bill McKibben. he sort of promotes animal use. He's not vegan, and he doesn't promote veganism. I mean, these people know about this. And watch the documentary Cowspiracy, The Sustainability Secret. Have a look at that. And some of these green groups get donations from the animal agriculture industry. Watch Cowspiracy and find out more about that. You know, these are green groups, the environmental groups and stuff. Just watch that documentary. So, you know, that's one of the reasons they don't talk about it. And also they think, oh, better not talk about veganism because we don't want to, you know, we don't want to dissuade donors, or we don't want to dissuade, you know, more people from joining our movement. Good Lord. You know, good heavens. What is this, a popularity contest? We're supposed to be actually, if you call yourself Extinction Rebellion, then take it seriously. If you really believe that extinction is on the cards, then you have to address the most important issue there is. That we don't have to wait for governments to do anything. We don't have to wait for governments to give us permission. We don't have to wait for corporations to give us permission. We don't have to wait for our parents to give us permission. We don't have to wait for anybody to give us permission to do this, to be vegan. You don't have to wait for anybody. Is our traditions and conveniences and, you know, sort of habits, is that more important than our own survival? And we're not talking about our children or our children's children. We're talking about us, because it looks like it's probably going to be over. I mean, I think it's over anyway, but I believe in addressing this issue for non-human animals, because if we go vegan, then we're not bringing into existence, because of our demand for animal products, all these sentient animals to be tortured and killed. So I promote it for that reason. That's the most important reason to me. And also, equally important, this is their home too. So maybe even though we're going to go extinct, because it looks like 3 degrees is a certainty at this point, right? It's looking like 3 degrees is a certainty with the end of ice. If you've seen Dar Jamal's interview with Chris Hedges. But, you know, we can go vegan right now, and we can certainly slow down significantly what is going to happen. So, you know, there are all these reasons, you know, and animal agriculture is responsible for the 6th mass extinction. And we're on the front lines of that, by the way, just in case you don't think we're animals. Just in case people think, oh, humans think, oh, no, we're separate to animals. No, we're not. We are an animal too. You know, at some point there will be no food for people to eat. There will be no plants to eat. If there's no plants, there's no animals, and we're animals too. Okay? That is coming. Agriculture is already suffering tremendously, and things are not growing because it's too hot, or there's too many swings in the climate. There's too many changes, they can't adapt. I see, you know, here we have maybe a couple of hot days. We had one hot day here. It's almost 38 degrees, which is very unusual for Tasmania. This summer has been very dry and we've had a lot of fires down here. That's also very unusual, and that's part of the climate crisis. But it was almost 38 degrees, and the plants were looking, you know, quite debilitated. They were looking quite wilted. And if you get a lot of those kinds of days, I'm talking about, you know, native plants here too. I'm not talking about plants that, you know, require cooler climates. I'm talking about native plants. We're looking a bit wilted. You get a few days of that, or you get a string of days like that, which is becoming more common in other parts of Australia and in other parts of the world. And you are going to see, plants really start to not be able to cope with it. They're not going to be able to cope with it. That's what's happening right now in agriculture. So this whole idea of reducing, you know, you can put that in a boat and push it out to sea as far as I'm concerned. It's stupid. It's not going to address anything in any meaningful way. It's also using animals, and I'm against that because they're sentient. We don't need to use them. It's not really addressing, it's not going to address significantly at all this climate crisis. And if we do address it significantly by going vegan, there might be some species that survive, even if we don't. And that would be really nice, wouldn't it? That we haven't completely wiped out the planet. So anyway, excuse me if I sound a little bit impatient with this, but I just find it absolutely gobsmackingly, it's gobsmackingly amazing to me that at this late stage, people are still hanging on to their bloody animal products. You know, still wanting to consume this god-awful, this fucking death that is dairy and eggs and flesh and all of that. Still wanting to ingest that awful stuff that's destroying our bodies and destroying the planet and destroying the lives of sentient animals who are bred into existence for this awfulness. For a few moments of palate pleasure, we're willing to risk our existence and the survival of most other species on the planet for a few moments of palate pleasure. I mean, Jesus H. Christ, what on earth? You know what I'm saying to you? You know what I'm saying? I've been talking about this now on and off for the last 2 or 3 years in particular. But in recent times, I've really been talking about it more often and with less patience because we've got to get a grip. We've got to get a grip. Seriously. So, you know, and this whole grass-fed thing, forget that. That's actually worse. It's worse for climate crisis. And I'm going to leave a link to why it's worse. Forget that. We have lots and lots of grass-fed stuff happening around here. It's worse. You know, and these grass-fed animals, they're more active, so they drink more water. There's a huge amount of water drain. You know, they still produce gas. They still produce flatulence, and they still use huge amounts of land. You know, and the waste, huge amounts of waste, and these big industrialized farms that people refer to as factory farms. I mean, even the free range and all of that, you know, in these huge warehouse sheds are pretty much factory farming, you know. I've done a video just a couple of days ago called The Humane Deception, so check it out. But these industrialized facilities produce massive amounts of waste, massive, and they contribute to dead zones. But anyway, this is all I was going to talk about really, as far as animal agriculture destroying the planet. But you know, and the green groups and like environmental groups that are supposedly addressing the climate crisis and yet just ignore veganism, pretend that it's some sort of personal thing people can do, if they mention it at all, which they usually don't. I mean, Extinction Rebellion doesn't have a mention of it on their site. They never mention it at all that I see, except I saw one group, Extinction Rebellion in Exeter, mention it in England. That's about all I've seen. And if I wrote to somebody and they said, oh, yes, we think veganism is important. Well, if you think it's important, then put it on your site. And at every campaign event, you ask people to go vegan. You know, I'm sorry, I don't believe you when you say you think it's important if it's not even mentioned on your site, and you don't mention it at events and say to people, look, the governments aren't going to do anything. You can do something right now. You can do something right now. You don't have to wait for anybody, any corporations or anything. You can do something right now and go vegan. You could say that at every event. You could be vegan yourselves, everybody in the organization be vegan, or, you know, these groups, these chapters, and always, always say how important it is. You read that study. People in Extinction Rebellion, read that study, the UK study. that I posted those 2 memes about. Read it. Its conclusion is it's the single most important action we can take to address not only the climate crisis, but acidification of the oceans, eutrophication of the lands, and clearing of forests, the water shortages, the 6th mass extinction. There's a whole bunch of things. Destruction of the ocean. The oceans are going to be empty in 2048 because we're fishing them out of existence, and we're taking everything, not just target fish. We're taking everything with it, in these big trawlers, and we're responsible for that. And there's like, for every 1 pound of fish, there's 4 pounds, or 3 or 4 pounds, I think it's 4 pounds, that are thrown overboard, and that includes dolphins, turtles, sharks. 160 or is it 200 million sharks every year are killed as a result of this whole quote-unquote bycatch. You know what I'm saying? Watch the upcoming documentary. I haven't seen it. It still hasn't come out, but it's showing a whole lot of memes on their Instagram account. If you're on Instagram, go to Seaspiracy, Seaspiracy. Check that out at Instagram and have a look at the different memes they put up on the destruction of fishing, of our consumption of fish and other aquatic animals, how disastrous that is for the oceans. Just check it out. Go to Instagram and subscribe to their account and check out what they have on that account. And it's got some frightening nutrition information too in relation to fish, like scary stuff. Not, oh, isn't it good for you? No. Okay, so check it out and see how destructive our consumption of aquatic animals is. And yes, they're sentient. So let's. I mean, I don't know. I've almost given up. I've almost given up on sort of. I sort of feel like, in some ways, I'm sorry to say this, but I think we're too stupid to live as a species. Too stupid to live. Because, this is something that we have to all do. And everybody's wringing their hands about, and starting to panic. I can see people panicking. And yet, mention veganism, then suddenly their taste buds are more important than their own survival. That's the bottom line. People can't even go vegan. I think that vegetarianism is... What do you think dairy cows... they're cows too, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, people can't even get their heads around that veganism and vegetarianism are nothing alike. One is an ethical position, the other one can be ethical, but I mean, if it's an ethical position, that means you shouldn't be using animals at all, because they're all being killed and tortured and their children taken from them, right? Vegetarianism is a real problem, and it's a big problem for the environment. And people tend to consume more dairy and eggs when they're vegetarian. So it's worse. It's worse for animals, because dairy is a terribly violent industry, and there's plenty of death and killing in that industry, and male calves being killed by the millions because they're no use to the dairy industry. So let's stop, thinking that vegetarianism is something good, because it isn't. It isn't good. I'm going to leave a link to an essay called "What's Wrong with Vegetarianism." Please check it out. Okay, so anyway, so please, Extinction Rebellion people, get a grip. Get a grip. Otherwise, I can't personally take you seriously at all. It's just a whole lot of grandstanding. If you're ignoring the elephant in the room, that people need to go vegan, then you're just taking up space. I mean, it's great that you're talking about nonviolent civil disobedience, but you can be vegan too. It's not enough running around doing nonviolent civil disobedience if you're not vegan. That is nowhere near enough. We need to, be the change, right? And stop pretending that veganism isn't important. It's central, and it's not some sort of personal choice. This is a really, really important thing to do. As important as nonviolence, more important than nonviolent civil disobedience. More important. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. So please hit the like button if you like the content. Please leave comments if you wish to. And please subscribe and click the notifications bell, otherwise you don't receive updates. I always appreciate your comments. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Please check out my vegan podcast, howtogovegan.org. Till next time, bye for now.